So GamersNexus publishes a documentary on NVIDIA black market GPUs, and Bloomberg takes it down using the DMCA. So is GamersNexus just stealing Bloomberg's news? Or are they using it as evidence to tell a much bigger story? There are big implications. If Bloomberg's view wins, it means any investigative journalist who cites news footage risks takedown. If fair use wins, it protects the ability to hold corporations and governments accountable. So for me then, the big question is it a fair use? The fair use question isn't just interesting, it's potentially precedent-setting. If Bloomberg is right, then any news outlet can take down an investigative video by claiming even a few seconds of footage. If GamersNexus is right, then this is exactly what fair use is for. It seems like an easy one. Let's dive in. GamersNexus, one of YouTube's most popular tech news and reviews channels, put together a 3.5-hour documentary about the dark economy surrounding GPU chip export restrictions. These legal restrictions on the export of certain high-end GPU chips are designed to prevent China from gaining an upper hand in AI technology for both economic and military reasons. NVIDIA's SEC filings reveal that U.S. export restrictions on its high-end A100 and H100 GPUs to China and Hong Kong have impacted upwards of $400 million in potential sales. At roughly $40,000 per card, this $400 million figure represents about 10,000 cards minimum. At first, that doesn't seem like a lot, but consider that these are among the most powerful cards available today. These cards are used for training research, commercial, government, and military AI LLMs, and are required tech to keep up with the growth of the technology and remain competitive. So restricting their sale and distribution to economic and military adversaries makes sense. An effective restriction can maintain technological dominance for economic allies and a military advantage for military allies. Of course, export restrictions have led to efforts to get around export restrictions. GamersNexus reports that GPU smugglers have already been caught in Singapore, and smuggled GPU chips have been found inside products such as fake baby bumps and live lobster. So great, there's demand for the chips, and GamersNexus investigates. They go to Shenzhen and Hong Kong and learn about the dark economy and smuggling trade. They publish a 3-hour and 29-minute documentary, an investigative report about chip smuggling. And it's up for a day or so before it gets taken down by Bloomberg LP for copyright infringement using the DMCA takedown process we all know and love. As of the writing of this video, the GamersNexus video is still down. John from GamersNexus confirmed on Reddit that their legal team is dealing with it, and they believe the uses to be fair uses. While we wait for more news from insiders, I thought this was a great chance to do our own armchair fair use analysis. The question: does GamersNexus have anything to worry about? For a fair use analysis, we need to start with analyzing the purpose of the original work, the Bloomberg footage, and comparing it with the purposes of the secondary work, the GamersNexus video. There are 4 major factors to analyze in fair use, but the big one is the transformation of purpose. If the Bloomberg works and GamersNexus video are put out for 2 different purposes, then the likelihood of a fair use finding is high. Another major factor for analysis here is how much was used, especially in relation to the total original work and total secondary work. Did you use a lot or a little compared? And did you use the heart and soul of a work? A third fair use factor deals with the creativity of the works. All of the works here are factual, so I don't have to worry about an analysis between creative or fictional works. And the last major analysis in fair use is the market substitution factor. Does the GamersNexus video act as a substitute in the market? Can you watch the GamersNexus video and not have to watch Bloomberg's content? So now we know what to look for. Let's figure out what to look at. We don't know for sure what exactly is claimed in the GamersNexus video, but we know the claim is by Bloomberg. Bloomberg is Bloomberg.com, which is a news and finance information company. Funny coincidence, in a former life I once worked on the building lighting management system for Bloomberg in Manhattan. The GamersNexus video is 3.5 hours long, so I skimmed through it looking for clips that I thought didn't belong to GamersNexus, and therefore they would need either fair use or permission, usually through a license. It wasn't too hard since they took the time to attribute each clip they used. Starting with the first fair use factor, the purpose and the character of the use. Is there transformation? We start with the purpose each work was made for. What is the purpose of the Bloomberg videos that GamersNexus used? What does Bloomberg make content for? They are a news agency. They gather and report on financial and other newsworthy events. So they send reporters to gather information and report on various events every day. The purpose of the Bloomberg source videos is therefore news reporting. They aren't making a movie or a documentary or a how-to DIY video. They are reporting on newsworthy events happening around the US and the world. How about the GamersNexus video? GamersNexus made a video also to inform, but instead of gathering general news about what's happening every day, they set out to investigate a specific topic, the smuggling of restricted GPUs. To me, those seem like different enough purposes that they are two different uses entirely. Bloomberg's purpose is to report individual events to a broad audience and quickly. GamersNexus' purpose is long-form investigative reporting, synthesizing multiple sources into a deep analysis. And news reporting is one of the expressed fair use purposes listed in Factor 1. So my conclusion is that the uses are transformative enough to win Factor 1. While Factor 1 is important, and transformation is the most important fair use defense, we still need to look at the other factors. Regarding how much was used, GamersNexus used 278 seconds, or 4 minutes and 38 seconds, of Bloomberg-owned footage. A total of 18 uses of 11 clips, 7 of which are videos and 4 are static screenshots of titles or quotes from articles. Here are the timestamps and the lengths of the Bloomberg clips they used. It's possible I missed one or two, but I checked twice, so I'm kind of confident. From 1408 for 3 seconds, GamersNexus uses a Bloomberg TV clip that will be used later. There's no audio. Steve is narrating over top. At 1437, there's a 5-second clip from Bloomberg with David Sachs, the White House AI and crypto czar. He advocates for other countries to use U.S. technology. At 1442 for 13 seconds, a Bloomberg podcast clip of a graph and commentary about the chips helping the Chinese military. At 1455 for 11 seconds, a Bloomberg Originals YouTube channel clip with Catherine Thorbecke speaking about how the chips have military applications and the goal is to restrict China's AI advancement. At 1946 for 7 seconds, a Bloomberg.com article screenshot about chip restrictions being lifted. At 1953 for 10 seconds, a Bloomberg TV clip of Jensen talking about how lifting chip restrictions will be transformative, funny use of that word, for America. At 2033, a 7-second clip of a Bloomberg podcast video of Tim Cook bribing Donald Trump. There's no audio and Steve is narrating. At 2132, a 1 minute and 29-second clip of a Bloomberg television Trump press conference video talking about the restrictions and the H20 chip and rambling about getting 20% for America. At 23 minutes and 14 seconds, a 3-second clip of that same Trump press conference. At 24 minutes and 25 seconds, a 12-second clip of that same Trump press conference with Trump talking about Blackwell and it being super duper advanced. At 24 minutes and 41 seconds, a 30-second clip of the same Trump press conference. He won't make a deal for Blackwell, and Jensen is going to have to come see him about it. Then it skips a bit. At 3 hours and 14 minutes and 53 seconds, an 18-second clip of a Bloomberg podcast recording of Jensen on the street talking about the restrictions. At 3 hours, 15 minutes and 20 seconds, a 36-second clip of the same Bloomberg podcast's clip. Another one at 3 hours, 17 minutes, 42 seconds, 8 seconds with no audio, just Steve narrating over top. At 3 hours, 24 minutes and 18 seconds, 7 seconds of a static screenshot of a Bloomberg.com article. Another 8-second use of a Bloomberg.com article at 3 hours, 24 minutes and 36 seconds. An 8-second use of a static screenshot of a Bloomberg.com article at 3 hours, 25 minutes and 49 seconds. And the Bloomberg podcast clip previously used is again shown for 6 seconds at 3 hours, 26 minutes, and 37 seconds, for a grand total of 278 seconds used, or 4 minutes and 38 seconds. So some of the clips are used in the beginning 30 minutes of the GN video, and some of them are used at the end in the last 30 minutes, with no Bloomberg clips being used in the middle of the video. The GamersNexus video itself is 3 hours and 29 minutes long. That's 209 minutes long, or 12,540 seconds. At 278 seconds used and 12,540 seconds total for the secondary work, the Bloomberg clips are approximately 2.2% of the GamersNexus video. It's worth noting that some of those clips that are used, they're used without audio while Steve narrates over the top. So imagine quoting 2 pages from a 100-page book. You'd hardly call that excessive. In a fair use analysis, you'd also check how much was used relative to the total of the original, but I don't have access to the originals to know whether GamersNexus used a little or a lot of the clip's source material. You would also analyze the original works for their heart, to check how much of the quality of the original was used. It's hard to argue that these clips, though, contain a heart from Bloomberg's reporting. They're factual snippets, not creative expressions. A Donald Trump press conference doesn't have a heart or a core like the hook of a popular song or a cool visual effects scene in a sci-fi movie. So I have a difficult time concluding that GamersNexus used too much. The amount that they used was used to make their point and no more. This is exactly the kind of use that has been ruled to be a fair use in similar cases in the past. Last, there's the market substitution factor. This one is best understood by example of a direct substitute. You go to New York City, and you see street vendors selling bootlegged DVDs and Blu-rays for $10. You can buy a copy of a movie and not have to pay the owner. The bootleg disc is a perfect substitute in the market. You have the movie, you don't need the original. So in the GamersNexus case, is the GN video a substitute for the Bloomberg videos? Once you watch the GamersNexus video, do you feel you've watched Bloomberg, and you no longer have to watch Bloomberg for news, at least about the topic of smuggling GPUs? In my opinion, no. The GN video is not a substitute. If I'm a consumer of Bloomberg content and I watch the GN video, it doesn't affect my desire to consume Bloomberg content. In fact, it may make me want to look up the rest of the clips in the articles that GN referenced. I may be more likely to visit Bloomberg because only a small amount of Bloomberg content was shown, and if I want to know more, I have to go to Bloomberg. And courts have said in cases like the Bill Graham's Archives case that when the secondary use doesn't usurp demand for the original but actually adds context, then that favors fair use. If I'm right, and I'm right a lot, then the GamersNexus video is objectively a fair use, and it will be just a matter of how at this point. How do you convince Bloomberg to drop the claim? How do you get YouTube to put the video back up? How do you avoid a copyright strike, etc.? Bloomberg, for their part, is likely to say that GamersNexus got their fair use analysis wrong, that Bloomberg is a news agency, and that the purpose of their content is to sell video licenses through their commercial licensing desk. Since the GamersNexus video is using snippets to illustrate their larger story, they should have licensed the clips that belonged to Bloomberg. Bloomberg's lawyers will say it doesn't matter that only 2% was used. What matters is that Bloomberg makes money licensing that 2%. That's exactly what the Second Circuit said in the TV Eyes case. But TV Eyes was different. TV Eyes was a replacement clip service. GamersNexus is not replacing Bloomberg. It's using a few seconds as evidence in a massive new documentary. GamersNexus made a huge video and used only a small amount of Bloomberg footage. Many sources other than Bloomberg were used, maybe a dozen or more, so the GamersNexus final product isn't piggybacking off of Bloomberg content, but using Bloomberg content for further news reporting of a different purpose, which I believe is a transformative purpose under fair use law. So what happens now? We wait. GamersNexus has lawyers, and they are working it out now, I'm sure. Maybe they will issue a DMCA counter notice and hope YouTube puts the video back up. Maybe they will leave the video down and negotiate with Bloomberg to have the DMCA claim withdrawn. Maybe they will sue Bloomberg or dare Bloomberg to sue them to get a clear answer about the fair use. I will be following along, and I will keep you updated. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you get the latest from me. Thank you for all of your support. My channel is supported by individual supporters through YouTube, Patreon, Floatplane, and Twitch. Please consider supporting if you'd like to help me create more content. And I'd love to read your comments below. Let me know what you think of Bloomberg's claim. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. I love you all. Take care. Bye.